Comics. Welcome to 10 Questions, my friend.
What's going on, Jimmy? Thanks for having me, man. The best show on YouTube.
That's what I like to hear. I totally prompted him to say that. Thank you for coming through. But you're not wrong. So no, man, thanks a lot for coming. I was telling you kind of before we started recording that I've known about you for a while, but I've just really kind of started watching your content probably in the last 3 to 4 months. And I started watching. I was like, man, I got to have this cat on 10 Questions. I think we could have a good talk. So let's jump straight into this thing. The first question is always the same. It's what or who got you into comics?
Ooh, I was walking on the beach and then I got hit by honestly, man, it was one of those things. I had gone to a flea market and I just saw comics and I was with somebody who was like obsessed with comics and I was like, man, I don't get it. Like I like superheroes, I just don't get it. And then it turned into this obsession. And he was like I don't know how to say it, because like the guy I went with was basically like, dude, you could make money off these. And I was like, oh, okay, but like I kind of like them more for the art, because what I used to do was I used to get like old Fantastic Four and frame them at first, and that's kind of how like I got started. And then, as you venture off into like doing, what character is going to be mine, or like what sports team is going to be mine, you do some research, and then you kind of relate to certain characters. And Iron Man ended up being mine, and I'm not a billionaire. I'm not a playboy or anything like that. So I don't know how I related to him, but he was just the one that I gravitated towards. And yeah, that's just how I started.
Well, you kind of look like Robert Downey Jr. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, from a distance, here on camera.
Oh, thank you. Thank
you. So really, did you not read comics as a kid at all? It was really something that just kind of started. Like, when did you go to this flea market? It all kind of started.
So, for those of you that don't know, yours truly actually didn't grow up in Canada or North America. So I was actually born in South America. And I didn't really learn how to speak English. See, I did it right there. I didn't learn how to speak English until grade 3. So I would have been like 9 years old, I think. So, no, 3. Yeah, somewhere between 7 and 9 when I actually started learning English. And obviously, comprehending, reading and stuff like that in a new language. It was really hard. So I didn't really get into comics until I was about maybe like 13, 15, somewhere around there.
Wow. So how many languages do you speak?
Spanish, English, a little bit of Portuguese. Up here in Canada, we have to know a little bit of French. So I kind of know a little, like I can get by. Like I've been to Italy, I've been to France, and I've gotten by with like what I've been taught. And then obviously growing up near Brazil, like I kind of understand some of that Portuguese, but yeah, it's all that. Sometimes people think like, oh, dude, you know everything. I'm like, no, I just know like 2 languages very well, and then like a few other ones like so and so.
That's cool. So you were in South America. That's where you were born, was in South America?
Yeah, I was born in Uruguay.
And how did you end up making it over to Canada?
My parents just wanted a better life, man. That's it. They had Miami, New York, and Toronto as their 3 destinations, and then we ended up here. And that was it, man. We've been here ever since. I'm 34 now, so I've been here like 20 years plus.
Oh, wow. That's cool. No, yeah. Absolutely. That's cool, man. And so as far as like the comics, I want to kind of jump back over to that. Was when you said you were with your friend, was that at like age 13?
Yeah.
Or was that like 2 years ago?
No. That was like, 13, 14, because the flea market that like I always talk about now, it's funny how like, full circle. We used to go as kids because there was a big Pokemon vendor at the time that was there, and he would just give out cards that you normally wouldn't see. And that's where I got the exposure to comics. But like I was going to the flea market and these antique shops for Pokemon, and then I ended up falling in love with comics, and that's just kind of where it all started, right? And again, antique shops, flea markets, you're finding these books for like a quarter, 50 cents. Like I remember, being able to find 2 quarters on the street, during the week, walking home from school and being like, okay, I'm going to go spend this money on a comic book at the flea market. And that's just kind of how I went about, my life. So.
No, that's cool. And so like for you, is it still the same now to where, covers kind of speak to you? Like it's the art of it that speaks to you?
Dude, no doubt. I always say the same thing. it's art. If I didn't have my wife, I would probably have one hallway with just like the best covers that I think about. But yeah, the art always captures me. There's always times where, you know, some shops know how I collect and things like that. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, what is this? And like, I'll be like, it's literally just because the art, like I love the art. The art always speaks to you. It's the cover that gets you first. Everything else is just, you know, secondary to me. You know, there's a lot of first appearances that like are on a meh cover, and it doesn't resonate the same way as when like those covers or that book is more valuable because of the cover, right? I just the art, man. Anybody who knows me knows Fantastic Four stuff, like the way the writing is, the art, the word bubbles, the font, everything about it, I just love, man. So it's definitely the art and the covers.
That's cool. You know, I collected as a kid, and very much like what you're talking about. My uncle sold at the flea market. He sold comic books. He sold basketball cards, you know, baseball cards, things like that. So, you know, I'm quite a bit older than you, so Pokemon wasn't even around then, you know. So, but it was trading cards, and I used to go with him all the time, and he would sell those things. So I kind of grew up in a flea market, hanging out with him, and that was really my first foray into comics. And then, you know, as I've said on here 1,000 times, I found girls and beer, and kind of got away from it. And then when my kids got to a certain age, I was looking for something to do. And I ventured into a comic book shop, and boom, there you go. You know, 20 long boxes later, here we are. So it's, you know, but it's one of the things that's just where you were talking about the covers. At first, it was about the characters, right? Like I love Superman. I love Spider-Man. I love Hulk. I love Firestorm. I love Hawkman. So I was kind of gravitating towards those, right? Mainly DC heavy, and then some of the Marvel characters that I love. But as the collecting has gone on, and I've kind of changed the way that I collect, you know, since I started back, it's the cover art.
Right.
It really speaks to me. And, you know, like there's a door sitting over here. There's got some of my favorite covers, you know, from the past year. And I kind of change it out every year since I started doing it. So, yeah, I think that's cool, man. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people, that's what speaks to them, you know, is that cover's the first thing that grabs you, right? When you see the book, it's the cover.
Yeah. Like I'm a huge Iron Man fan, and like, you know, there's some people that like come to my home or friends of mine, and they'll be like, what is this? And I'll be like, oh, it's just, you know, this. And they're like, oh, is it like, you know, is it valuable? Is it a first appearance? Is it this? I'm like, no, I just like the cover. I like the art. I like the art. Plus I like Iron Man. It's just a win-win for me. Like I just, you know, so sometimes people just overdo it and they want to know why you collected, but it's like, that's the whole purpose of like collecting what you like and like actually, you know, liking a certain character. Right. So.
No, absolutely, man. I dig it, right? That's what, you know, you dig it. So have you gotten into like original art or anything like that?
No, man. I recently, well, I think everybody was made aware of like that original piece that went for like what, 3 million or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that, I mean, if I have that kind of money, maybe. Right now I don't have that kind of money. So no, I'm just gonna stick to comics, but I do get it. I mean, I wouldn't mind having something like that. I like going into certain shops where they have those art pieces where, you know, it is the panel by panel, and, you know, some of them are more expensive, some of them aren't. Like, you know, we've all seen them, you know, priced out $20, 100 to whatever. It's just kind of cool. I just haven't been able to find one that like I could be like, you know what, I really want that on my wall, or I really want that on my shelf. I really want that in my office. So I've kind of just stayed away from it and just focused on the comics. Not to say I'm closing the door on it, because art is art, right? I don't know what I'll see tomorrow or next week or next month, right? That's the beauty of art. That's the beauty of, you know, even comics. You don't really know what's coming. And yeah, so I won't close the door on it, but yeah.
No, and I love comic book art. You know, it's one of those things. I'm not going to go buy a Picasso. You know, I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
but I might buy a piece of original art of Superman and hang it on my wall if my wife would let me. Right. So, you know, it's just one of those things. But it's just, as my collecting has went on, that's something I've started to look at. But it is very pricey. I haven't gotten to the point. Like, I love David Mack. Right. Like, I love David Mack's art. And he was at C2E2, and I was talking to him, and he had some original pieces over there, and those things were going for $3-4 grand, right? And I was like, shit, I'm not buying that today, but, you know, but it's still cool, and it may be something that I want to look at down the road, because I love Daredevil too, and he had a lot of cool Daredevil stuff over there that was dope. So,
Daredevil, yeah.
Yeah. No. So let's jump over to question two. Like, what brought you to YouTube? Like, what inspired you to start a YouTube channel?
You know what's funny is obviously it starts with like COVID, of course. Thanks. But you know, we weren't able to hang out you know, and get together, obviously, like a lot of places in the world. And I was starting to watch like a lot of comic people and Very Gary, back when Very Gary was at like 4,000 subscribers, somewhere around there. So maybe that gives you a little bit of a time frame. But I started watching that him, and you know, we were chatting because he, you know, he was really good at getting back to people and like talking. You could just have a genuine conversation with him. And I had told him, I'm like, man, I think I could do it. Like, I have some knowledge. I do some spec. I do this. And he was like, do it. And then I remember running to my wife being like, hey, I think I'm going to do this. And she was like, yeah, do it. Why wouldn't you? So it really just became like an outlet to like hang out, because the way I treat my shows and stuff is basically, you know, and like how you mentioned it prior to us going live, I treat my shows as if I'm at a bar or I'm at a restaurant with, you know, friends, and we're just shooting the shit. Like, that's literally how we do our shows. It's just like a natural thing. There's no script. It's just us talking. And I think that that's the beauty of it. And then it just transpired into something, man, 2 years later, or not even 2 years, because 2 years will be May. You know, we're having fun. We're kicking it. I mean, it's just a good time. So, yeah.
So yeah, just really bored COVID and was kind of watching and just said, I'm going to give it a shot.
You know what? Pretty much. Like, I had no expectations. Like, I know people are like, oh man, you probably thought about like 1,000 subscribers. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't at first. I wanted me as a person to, you know, be on screen. Like, I wanted people to like see like me. So like when people do meet me in public or do meet me at shows, they're like, dude, you're a good time, man. You're funny. You're this. And that's how I am on my shows, right? Like, I give everybody a chance. I you know, I communicate with everybody. When people message me, I try to get back to them as soon as possible. You know, I treat everybody equally as a friend and things like that. So like, it's just, that was the biggest thing for me, is like, when people do get to meet me, I hope that they don't just see like a personality. I hope they see like, oh, this guy's legit. This guy's real. I want to have a beer with him.
Yeah.
Because at any show, when I see people, I'll always be like, hey man, we're staying till this time. So like, you want to go get a beer after? And like, that's literally what I say to everybody. And usually it happens. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's always a good time, man. So yeah.
What's been your biggest surprise about, you know, the YouTube community? Because I will tell you, for me, it is the community aspect of it. I didn't know, I guess, because like I said, I'm older, and I didn't think that I would ever make friends online, right? Like, you know, I still like to talk on the phone. I don't necessarily want to text. So I still like talking on the phone, but it's you know, that's been my biggest surprise. What has it been for you?
You know what? I would have to say the exact same, and I don't want to copycat, because I don't like that. I want, you know, people to get different views, but the fact that I have made friends in California, in British Columbia, in England, in Florida, Quebec, New York, and I have never met these people, and we can joke. Like, I've told my actual friends and family, I'm like, I talk more to these people than I do to you guys. Like, you guys need to be more fun, because you know, it's not just comics all the time, right? Like, you know, I truly believe that I've met some friends that I'll probably have for a lifetime, and we haven't met, and we talk about way more than just comics. And I think that's the beauty of it. I really do. I didn't know that there was this many people who cared about comics as much. You know, when you think about the world on a global scale, like I just thought I was just this little ant, and my hobby didn't really matter, you know, because when you put it on the scale of like cards or, you know, sneakers or things like that, like I just think that there's more people. So I never thought that it was like as big as it is. And then now, you know, you look back, you take a step back, you look at all the channels, you look at all these accounts, you look at all these people, and it's just like, man, this is huge. There's a lot of us. So I'm just proud to be a part of it, man. And the fact that people tune in and, you know, respect what I have to say, or, you know, they learn something, and, you know, it's good stuff.
No, I mean, I really thought I was just going to start making videos. I'd put videos out, and that would be it. That's really what I thought. I mean, like, I'm being legit. I thought I'm just going to make these videos, put them out there. We'll see what happens. I didn't realize that it was going to be like this just whole big family environment, getting to hang out. And I've made some of really, like you said, what I consider to be some of my very good friends today through this YouTube journey, and it's just very cool. So let's jump on over to question 3, and I want to talk about your channel. I did this last week on 10 questions with Swaggle and I really kind of enjoyed doing it. So I thought I would try it with you as well and introduce some of the segments that you do on your channel for the people who are watching that maybe don't follow your channel or know who you are. Let's work through some of your segments. So the first one is Newbie Verse. And I think that's your live stream, right? And you're up to, I think, what will tonight be episode 83?
No. So those are every Sunday.
Every Sunday. Thank you.
Yeah. Every Sunday is the Newbie Verse. I've kind of just created it. A lot of, I shouldn't say there was a lot of people that were saying Newbie Verse when I first started out, and it just kind of stuck with me. So I just play with it. Right. That's Sundays. So we talk about New Comic Book Day. We do comic news. It is just a conversation. All information's out there. And then I finish it off with Newbie Spec of the Week. It's usually it used to be anywhere between like 5 and 8 books. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to run out of books. So maybe let's, kind of compact it. So I started doing maybe like 4 to 2 books, depending on how much time I have throughout the week, right? Because like a lot of people just want to put certain things out there like, oh yeah, this is Spec. And it's like, well, why? Just because it's a comic, right? Like I want to be able to read the story. I want to be able to connect dots. Because all that stuff is fun for me. So I want to be able to connect all the dots and then be like, guys, here's my spec. This is what I think, and this is why. And if I can't give you the proper information and I can't go 100%, I don't want to put it out there. I wouldn't put my name like, oh guys, I kind of read this like 25% through. I think this is going to happen, or this is like, I would never do that. Right. So yeah, it's a fun time, man. A lot of people tune in. 82 shows. I can't believe that I've done it for 82 Sundays. Again, it just goes back to like, I didn't really think it was going to be, this long. Like I thought maybe I'd already be like, people would be bored of me or whatever, but like, I don't know. There's been times where I've only canceled the show twice in 2 years. And like those 2 days, like I think like everybody and their mother was like, man, where are you? I can't find your show. What's going on? What's going on here? And I'm like, guys, remember I told you it's my birthday, or it's like, my sister's wedding happened on the one Sunday. So I had to cancel. So yeah.
So walk me through the different segments. So like I'm a New Comic Book Day junkie, right? And a lot of the content that I do on my channel revolves around New Comic Book Day. Mm-hmm. So what do you guys kind of focus on? Is it just the stuff that's coming out that week?
So on Sundays, yeah, the Sunday shows, it's just getting people ready for Wednesday. Because believe it or not, Jimmy, there's a lot of people that don't believe in FOC. There's a lot of people that, have the same ability to get these books pre-FOC, but they don't. And then they wait until certain shows. And, I've had people be like, oh, shoot, I got to go back and get that book then. And it's like, I don't know if you're going to be able to get it because it's pretty hot right now. And there's only 3 days until release. But just giving that information to people, it's fun. And, I always like to think of myself, even in my professional life, as a sponge. I'm a work in progress. No matter what your, craft is, I've always thought that. It's something that my grandfather taught me. Always be a sponge, always be a work in progress. And that's kind of how I've taken my journey in YouTube. Again, I'll never say I know everything or I know something. I'll be the first one to be like, yeah, I don't know that. I took a big leap when people were like, man, do you like Star Wars? And I was like, no. And I thought that was going to end me. But people still tune in. So I appreciate that. But yeah, it's it's always fun learning, man. Because even on Sundays when I go do the show, like somebody will just message me and be like, hey, Noob, just so you know, like this happens in this, and like this is a tie-in. So like I'm also learning all the time as well, man.
No, absolutely. And then the comic news, I'm assuming, is just the news that week.
Yeah,
the stuff that comes out.
Yeah.
And then the spec stuff, are you doing New Comic Book Day spec, or are you doing just general spec? Like Moon Knight's coming out. This might be a book that you want to grab.
Sometimes I'll have time for for example, right? Like when the Moon Knight trailer dropped, it was like a Monday, right? So then I was like, okay, I got 6 days to kind of maybe come up with like some Moon Knight stuff, or like when Julia Carpenter, Dakota Johnson was casted as her. That came out on Tuesday, so I was like, oh, okay, so like maybe I'll get a jump on this. Like I'll start doing some research on Julia Carpenter, and then that I did my spec on that. But sometimes it's just whatever, you know, like it could be whatever I'm reading or whatever's in the news or reader. Because like sometimes people don't realize like it's not just movie or show spec, like there is reader spec as well. So I just kind of try to connect the dots wherever I can.
I like it. All right, so question 4 in this segment: key comics to still invest in.
Yeah, that's actually, well, tonight. So I don't know when this is going to air, but this is actually tonight, March 1st. Yeah, so a buddy of mine, again, another friend of mine that I've made through the YouTube world, but Mr. Ryan at Automatic Comics. He's a numbers guy. I'm a numbers guy. We came up with something because in our group chats, we're always talking about, you know, big keys to still get. And if you follow his channel, like he is one of those guys that gets a lot of those big books. So I just thought, hey, do you want to collaborate? You know, it's a good way to like hang out as well and just, you know, shoot the shit. And yeah, it's been a success, man. A lot of people tune into that one because of course people get, you know, not turned on in a weird way, but like they get turned on when, you know, people, you know, throw that investment word, or like, you know, people always want to know that whether it's in comics or whatever the case is. So yeah, it's a good show. I have a lot of fun because that's one of the shows that even though I do most of the work, like Ryan also throws in a lot of data and information that I'm learning for the first time. So it's always fun.
Let's expand on that a little bit, because that's one of the things, you know, I think everybody, if you're in the hobby in some way, you know, you hear the saying a lot, you know, make the hobby pay for itself.
Right.
And you can do that through the spec market, you know, through the different investments. And, you know, in talking with the defects and, you know, those guys do a lot of the spec talk, you know, those things. And I learned a lot from them about how they approach spec, right? And they have an interesting dynamic in that, you know, you've got one guy that is a numbers guy, you've got one guy that's a reader, and then you've got kind of a general fan, and they holds the whole thing together. And I thought it was interesting, you know, like Moon Knight's coming out. So Jay goes back and gets the original Moon Knight omnibus, reads through, you know, finds different characters, and then they start looking at those characters. When you're looking for spec, do you do something similar to that, or do you have a different process that you work through?
So I get a blindfold on, I spin 10 times,
and throw the dartboard.
I just point at the wall, and wherever I land on that character, I'm just no, that's not how I do it. I actually do it similar to that. Just, you know, there's so many outlets right now that you could use, you know, like internet, you know, books. There's just so much information. We're in the information age, I think. I don't know. I mean, we're still in modern comics, even though we've been in it for like, you know, 50 years, it seems. But I do the same thing as kind of like Jay. If I know a character's coming out, I try to basically, okay, who are the villains? Who are they associated with? Who's their family? And then I start doing my dots there, right? So I make the puzzle a little smaller. Okay, so then I have, you know, the villain's character's family. Okay, which ones connect? Okay, and then I make the puzzle smaller. Okay, well, which one does he have more of a relationship? And then you make the puzzle smaller. And then you can kind of tune it out. And then you find out that like, oh, wait a minute. This like D-list or E-list character is kind of got a connection with all of them. So like if this character shows up, then this character's got to show up. Means that character definitely has to show up. And then it's just one of those. I mean, it's spec and investing is a gamble regardless, right? And I know those guys will tell you the same thing. It's a chance, it's a risk, right? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's just kind of how I do it. I've been successful doing it. I've also been wrong a few times, but that happens in life. You can't always win. So,
well, it's why they call it spec, right? I mean, it's speculation.
Exactly.
You're guessing. Exactly. You're essentially guessing, and
exactly.
You know, and you hope that you hit enough to where it's profitable if you're trying to make money. And do you look at, you know, and I guess we'll just go on to question 5 and question 4. No, sorry,
no,
I'm all fouled up. Question 5, and that is Undervalued Comics, and you do a segment on that. And I was kind of wondering, like, how do you kind of determine what is undervalued? Because I know I look at a lot of data. I look at numbers too. I'm a numbers person. I look at a lot of numbers. I've been studying a lot, like really blue chip books, right?
Right.
Like I'm really looking at those as a true investment and making it part of my portfolio somewhat to diversify somewhat. So I kind of study data, sales trends, you know, things that are going up and down. And does that tie in at all to the undervalued comics segment that you do?
Yeah. So that one basically is, and I talk about this on pretty much all the shows that we do, where I kind of do like a John Cena, you know, and I always have to tell people, I'm like, no, I'm not trying to be John Cena. It's just one of those, like, if it's not in your face, you forget about it. Right. And there's a lot of books that, you know, they've hit a certain plateau when like something is rumored. You know, Riri Williams, for example. And no, I'm not doing it just because I'm an Iron Man fan, but you know, you take Riri Williams, we found out that she was going to have a show a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Everything exploded like 9/8. And this, you know, excluding like her first appearances, which are like crazy right now. But like you take a look at any other books, like her first solo, her, you know, when she gets named Iron Heart, things like that, like those reach a certain level. So when those reach a certain level and they hit a number, like I think, and I have them right behind me, boom, right there, the 1 in 25s, but I know the number one, the cover A was like a $700 book, you know, Canadian. The 1 in 25 reached almost like 1,500. So then when I'm looking through data and seeing like, oh, wait a minute, this book is like $600 now. That's undervalued to me. Why? Because there's confirmation that the character is going to show up. Nobody's talking about it. Everybody still to this day is like, no. But we all know how it works. Once she shows up, and she is, the books are just going to go back up. So if you're looking at, say, a way to make money or let the hobby pay for itself, yes, the books are still expensive at, say, $600-700. Everyone's financial situations are different, but it's no different than taking a gamble on stocks or anything like that. It's just here you can kind of guess where, like, okay, wait a minute, this character is going to show up. I doubted this character was going to do anything, but this character went up. You know, like a lot of people are like, oh, Hawkeye stuff, that's not going to go up. The Hawkeye show was pretty good and everything went up, right? Like, so like it always keeps going. So I don't think it's going to change for that character. And that's just kind of how I do some of my research when it comes to like undervalued stuff. Also too, connecting the dots, right? So like, okay, if Blade is showing up and everybody's, you know, thinking Blade is going to be massive, well, let's look at some of his people, right? Ulysses is a big part of the Blade, you know, trinity or tree. So like, why isn't that book like crazy numbers, right? And it's an older book. There's not that many. So like that's where I do my research and things like that.
I like that. And what about books? Like I know a lot of times books will gain value. Like you said, you mentioned like Riri Williams, her first solo series.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because certain books will reach a certain plateau and they get to a point where most collectors can't afford to buy them anymore. Yep. So other books will start to gain in value because they are affordable. Most collectors can purchase them, and there will be some books on hand. And do you look at books like that as well and look for value there?
I think you have to. I think we're getting into a stage in comics where that is happening everywhere. And I noticed it more like a year and a half ago with like the Wolverine stuff where, you know, depending on what side of the coin you're on, if it's 180, 181, regardless, I mean, those are reaching already like, you know, crazy numbers. And if the character does show up, like it's rumored to happen, I mean, the book is just going to be untouchable for a while. Not to say it won't come down, but then you saw how, okay, well, people couldn't afford that. So what did they do? Okay, Wolverine #1 from both series, right? Those books ended up reaching like $1,500 Canadian in 9/8. Okay, what's next? Oh, Marvel Presents 72, right? So you do the ladder effect. That's kind of how I call it. But you're seeing it with a lot of these characters, whether they're mainstream characters or not, right? And then in some of the lower characters, right? Like you're just seeing them, all the books of the characters go up just simply because A, there's not enough of them. B, they're not on enough covers. So the demand is there, right? Like you look at Elsa Bloodstone. I mean, there's maybe like what 20 covers with her, and like all her books in 9/8 are, it's a pretty penny, right? So when she does come, if she does come, that's the rumor, right? You have to look at the trickle effect because a 9/8 in her first appearance is like 1,600 Canadian, 1,500 somewhere around there. So people who are fans of the character or people who don't want to miss out or have the FOMO, what are they going to do? They're always going to do that ladder effect, right? So I expect nothing less from any of the characters that are coming out in the near future.
Nice. Love it. All right. So let's go to question 6. And that kind of still plays on this. And that is comic book failed spec. Is it time to sell? Yeah. So you've been specking on a book. It didn't work out, and you're trying to figure out, you're trying to come up with some money to buy something else. You bought low. Do you sell lower? Like, talk about that segment.
That is actually my favorite segment. And a lot of people are like, really? And it's my favorite segment because it's not necessarily like my spec, because like I'm never wrong. No, just kidding. But it's funny because, again, how fast we're in this age of like moving so quick. Like, if everyone's on Moon Knight, but I guarantee you, if tomorrow there's a trailer for, I don't know, a solo Cyclops series, everybody and their mother is going to be a Cyclops fan. Everybody's going to be collecting Cyclops. Like, it just happens. It doesn't have to be Cyclops. I don't want the comments to be like, what is this guy talking about? Cyclops is lame. No, I don't want it to be that. But, like, you know what I mean? We live in that world. So it's funny to me where you even fast track like a month, right? Or you go back a month and the books that made us go crazy. Like, you look at Fantastic Four 346, first appearance of TVA, right? The book was like everywhere in dollar bins for like $1. People were giving them away back in the day. And I know because I'm a Fantastic Four collector. The show comes out and the book exploded. Like, there was some sales of like $50, $60 raw. And now the book is back to being like $5, maybe less, right? So like, it's always funny to like, it's always fun, not funny. It's always fun to just look at like, okay, which ones made it through that, right? And because we also live in this world where we have a lot of jelly picks. And what I mean by jelly picks is those people that take a picture of like 600 copies of the book. And they're like, hey, I've been collecting this forever. And it makes you feel like, man, this picture makes me jealous. So I call those the jelly picks. But that's what happens because there's also some people that collect it. And then they were like, you know what? I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold it. There's going to be a second wave. And then there is no second wave. And then you're stuck because it's like even more devalued than when you bought it at the cheap, right? So it's always fun to me seeing those because like we all have FOMO. We all do it. I've done it. My neighbor's done it. I guarantee you my neighbor's done it. But like we all do it. So it's just fun to see where it is. And it's also fun to have that conversation of like, oh yeah, remember we thought this because of that show. And it just creates that, that connection with like the people who watch and things like that. So it's a good time for sure, man. It's also one of those where you're like, you always have somebody in the panel go, I hate this book, right? Because they fall victim to it. So that's what happens.
No, but that's what I like about that particular segment because that happens to everybody. Okay. Yeah. Now, I have a hard, fast rule, specifically like with new comic book day stuff, that if I don't get it at cover price, I won't buy it. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, there are books that'll get hot and they'll be on eBay for $20-$30 and, the FOMO can get you. I have a hard, fast rule. If I didn't, do my research and get it for covered, I'm not buying that.
Yep.
Now, I will do some stuff like in my research, I'll pick up some books and maybe pay up just a little bit if I think there's still value there. Yeah. And there's, meat left on the bone, so to speak. And I can make some money down the road. Do you kind of adhere to some rules like that yourself?
I will not buy over cover price. I just won't. I won't. Like right now, I mean, you look at people going crazy for Black Panther 3 first appearance of Tosin, and like the cover A is like $50. Now I'm sorry, I should have converted everything to American, so I do apologize. So it's like $50 Canadian, right? And even now I'm like if people are thinking it's going to be massive, should I get it at 50? And then I think to myself like, no, I had 3 copies, I sold them, I'm good. Like I'm okay. I'm okay missing some. Because it all works out. I find like, some you hit, some you don't, some you didn't even know were going to hit and they hit, right? That's just kind of how I look at it. But yeah, I won't pay cover price ever. Or sorry, I will pay cover price. I won't pay over cover price, especially on new books. No, they're because there's so much information out there. And, you have so many shows, Pressable Defects, TiVo. There's just so many, Comic Kingpins, myself, Empire Comics. Like these are just people that I follow. and they all do the research, and you know, like the information's out there, and people always put facts behind that information. They're not just saying, hey, go get this book because I said so. Like they're literally, you know, hey, you know, this is what's going to happen in the book, you know, blah, 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 the story tied in, and it's good information. You also have 2 weeks to order or you have a week to order the book. So like, it's not like, you know, you're going to have time, right? So that's kind of how I always look at it. Like there's always going to be somebody, like if I can't get to a shop to put my order in, I have a cell phone. And if I can't call because the cell phone tower is down, maybe I'll email somebody, be like, hey, can you send me, you know, put this book aside for me? Everyone's got time to do it. So that's just kind of my, you know, my 2 cents on all that stuff.
No, I agree 100%. Because you're right. And that's really like, if I could impart advice to new collectors is, you know, is that, because what you said is right on. Like when I like number ones, right? I enjoy indie titles, and I like to pick up the number ones because you just never know what's going to hit. So I generally buy 3 to 4 copies of pretty much every number one that comes out. Well, then you have a book like Something Is Killing the Children. Yeah. And I bought the cover A's, I bought the cover B's, you know, like I bought 4 copies of each. Well, that just made, you know, my entire year as far as picking up a grail I want, and I got to keep a copy for myself, you know, and so for my PC. So that's the kind of thing I tell people is like, look, some books are going to hit, and you're just never really going to be able to guess when that's going to happen and what book it's going to be. So no, I love that. That's one of my favorite segments that you do actually is that one. And it was just funny to hear you say it was your favorite because it really is one of mine too.
Yeah.
It's just because what do? We've all been in that situation where you've spec'd on something and it just completely misses, and you're like, all right, what do I do? So what's your advice on when to sell? Do you sell?
I think, and I actually had this conversation with one of my dear friends, Mr. BC. You know, you have to be not smart. Let's use another word. Like you have to remember why you bought that book, right? So there's a lot of books that people are like, Noob, you didn't really like feel anything letting that book go. I go, no, because that book was literally bought for the purpose of meat on the bone. I bought this book because I know I was going to maybe make $400 off of it or $500 off of it. And that's going to lead me the fastest way to get another book. Same with New Comic Book Day. I think this book, when I buy it at cover, I can make 30, 40 bucks. Okay. You got to let go. Especially when you know that, like you have to sell it at, you know, we all know it's either the first trailer, the second trailer, or like maybe a week just before the movie releases because everybody's talking about it, right? That's it. After the movie, every book takes a hit. Like there's been no character that has not taken a hit. And I always tell people that. They're like, no. What about? And then it's just a long pause because they can't tell you a character. Every character has that. Every book, right? Look at Eternals. Look at Carnage. Look at Venom. Like a lot of decent books, but all of them fall, right? And it just goes back to like how we are in this community. What's next? What's next? What's next? You know, we have to get the next book. We have to get the next show. Yeah, exactly, right? So it is what it is, but that's when I usually sell is like first trailer, second trailer. I think you're moving a little dicey if you wait till like the week of the movie. I've not really found the success there. Usually it's like first trailer, just because it's new, it's fresh. You haven't seen it, right? Especially with a lot of the characters that we're seeing now. They're out of the box, right? Like Shang-Chi, you know, martial arts in Marvel. How is that going to work, right? It's a success. Moon Knight, how's that going to work? You know, we're getting all these characters that don't work. So like, you know, sometimes you might only have like that first, you know, trailer because it could be a bust, right? Like I always say this, Marvel bats, and I'm a big sports guy, but Marvel's batting like maybe 950 lifetime, right? Like there's not many shows or movies that are garbage, and nobody bats 1,000. So like eventually something's not going to do well. And like, I just don't want to be that person, right? That like goes all deep on one of those projects, right? Because it's bound to happen. Like, you know, people change, you know, it just happens. So, you know, I always try to just go like first trailer and always remember why you bought certain books. If the book is a PC book, then you don't have to worry about it because it's staying in your PC. If you bought it for an investment, well, you got to be able to detach from that because you got to remember why you bought that book. I bought this book to buy X. Okay, so go and get X.
Right. No, I think that's great advice. One of the things that I tell people, you know, in my general business is about the business cycle. It's the one thing that I learned in college that is absolutely, no matter what, it bats 1,000. What goes up will come down and will probably go back up again.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's a constant turn. And like you said, it's about the hype. It's about the trailer. It's about, you know, the second trailer, and then people get pumped, and then the show comes out. And you may have some during the show, but once the show's over, it's fizzled out for now, and those books will come back down, and then the next thing goes up.
Yep.
Yep. So, no, it's a lot of fun. Speaking of movies, are you pumped about the new Batman movie coming out?
We're going to go see it on Thursday. So I am pumped. A lot of people are like, Newbie, you don't like DC. I love DC. I really do. There's just too many, man. I'm not like, I could probably have passed over so much gold in DC books that somebody was like, man, that's like a $30 book. I'm like, I don't know. Right. Because I don't know too much about like the book side of it, but I'm pumped for Batman. Zoe Kravitz looks amazing in it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They're already talking about a sequel. So I don't know. Usually when you hear about that, especially when it's like not connected to something, it's usually good things. So I like the fact that it's not connected to like the DCU or whatever. And they're just doing their own thing. So I'm looking forward to that. Sometimes those are successful. It looks like it's going to be dark, which it should be.
It's Batman. It should be dark.
Yeah, right. No pun intended. Because people are like, oh yeah, of course, the Dark Knight. It's like, no. Like Batman should be dark though. That's what it is. It's a dark story. So let's tell it properly, right? So
no, and some of my favorite, honestly, Batman stories are these stories that are told outside of continuity.
Yeah,
and that's how I kind of see this one. And I never dreamed in my entire life that it was an Edward. Was that who he was in what's the movie called? My daughters love that movie, Twilight. Would be freaking Batman and would look awesome. I mean, like, I think he's going to do a great job. Like, I will be disappointed if it's not good, because I'm pretty pumped about that one. So, all right, now we're going to try something new, okay? And first time ever, Newbie is my guinea pig for this segment. Every week for the foreseeable future, unless I decide I don't like doing it, question 7 will be the same. All right. And that will be explain this Instagram post. Now, I went through Newbie's Instagram feed. I was looking through, and, you know, a lot of it is, you know, sharing his content. Here's what's coming up, announcing his shows and things like this. And then I come across this one, and I was like, this seems out of place to me. So I want you to explain this Instagram post.
So yeah, so like you said, you know, I do post like a lot of my shows, but I also like go on a lot of hunts. So like I'll always post like, you know, things that I find, mostly comic related. But then I came across this at a recent antique shop, and I had never seen it. I love vintage stuff because I'm always thinking like this would look good like right behind me, like in my office or like somewhere, right? Like I just thought it would be good. Like I don't even care if it's complete or if it's just the box. I would have just bought it. One, it was like $85, I think. So I'm like, okay, no. But then the funny thing is, like, I'm laid back. I'm always joking, things like that. It takes a lot to like offend me. You know, I like laughing and having a good time. And I just thought, I'm like, it's the Hulk game, but why is the Fantastic Four? Right? I'm like, I don't get it. What, like, there's nothing saying it's Fantastic Four. They just have Hulk and then the Fantastic Four there. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, what's the whole concept there? So it's just funny. Sometimes it's really cool too, though, because when I do post some of this stuff, you'll get somebody that, you know, and I'm not trying to like show anybody's age, but like there's people that are like, oh man, I was alive when that was out, and like it was so hard to find one, or it was this or it was that, and then like you connect them. I'll be like, oh, it's at this flea market, so if you want it, like go here, or it's like at this shop, you know, if you want to go here. So it just goes back to like, you know, bringing joy. But like if it's comic book related, and I see it, I'm gonna post it, right? Like I'm not the biggest Star Wars guy, but when I find like some crazy Star Wars stuff, I'll always post it. It's always fun to like, you know, have those conversations with people. And then, you know, most of the conversations I've had with people who have become friends through it, it's like, man, I saw that post that you posted, and like and then you start talking, and then it gets to comics, and then you start talking about, you know, sports, whatever, and then you end up, you know, texting this person every day for 2 years.
Oh no! So did you buy the game, or was it was $85? And you were like, no, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was $85, and I'm like, no, that's okay.
Well, I was hoping you bought it because I was wanting to know if you played. Like, did you play the game and how bad was it? Because when those, like older board games like that, in some sense, like when my kids were growing up, we would play like Shoots and Ladders. That is the worst game ever made. That and Hi-Ho Cherry-O. I used to despise those games. So I was just kind of wondering if you played it. But when I saw the post and I read your caption, I was like, why is the Fantastic Four on
right?
there?
Like, why?
Yeah. Like, I was like, why are they there? I know the Hulk and the Thing, battled it out over the years. But, I don't know. I was just like, how odd.
Oh, man.
So what'd you think about that, Newbie? I mean, we'll make that part of question 7. Like, what do you think about that segment? You think that's something I ought to continue to try to do?
I like the idea, man. I really do. I love it. I'm always a firm believer of like looking back and having a good time. So like, yeah, it's fun, especially because like depending on when the post was made too, like you get, more knowledge of it, or like it marinates a little bit more. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. I actually should have bought that, or I should go back. Like you think about it a bit more and, things like that. But, and you never know, right? Like for all I know, like 5 years from now, I'll be watching, a YouTube video and this 6-year-old kid's like, hey, I found this at an antique shop and it's selling for $2 million. And I'll be like,
oh, crap.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I messed that up.
Like what? Right. So, just give them, something to think about. But yeah, I like the segment, man. It's good. It's good to look back.
Cool, man. Cool. All right. So let's go to question 8. And this is something I wanted to ask because I tried to look and see about when you started your channel. And I think it said June 2020 or May 2020. It was something like that. So we started around the same time. And you're up to roughly 2,800 subscribers. I've done well, or what I believe to be well, and I'm roughly 12 going to 1,300 right now. But you've clearly had some success, in channel growth in that period of time. And I just wondered if you would kind of give us your thoughts on why you've had the success that you've had. Like, are there any like golden rules or things that you follow that you think have attributed to that success?
I think the biggest one, and first of all, thank you, man. And congrats on 1,200. It is a tough hill to climb. I always think like the first 1,000 is like the hardest 1,000 to get, unless you're like really, really good at YouTube, which I am not. But I've just been myself, right? And like I said, right, like a lot of people who have met me are like, this is the guy I see on YouTube. And everybody always tells me the same thing. I like watching you because it's natural. It's like I'm at a bar. It's like I'm having a beer. It's like I'm having a conversation. A lot of people are, and I'm flattered. I tell family members this all the time. I'm like, yeah, okay. But like, there's people who I know literally listen to the shows while they're working or in the background. And they all say the same thing. They're like, dude, it's literally like I'm just hanging out with you at a bar or a thing. It's just like I'm one of the guys or girls, because there are some females that join the shows too. And that's what I wanted, man. It's a good thing to grow. Just be yourself. I think there's a lot of times where a lot of people are just trying to be someone they're not. They're trying to escape. And, then they meet you and then you're not, and then they lose interest. And I think like just being yourself, being natural, switching things up a little bit here and there, right? Trying to be different. Cause like, everybody talks about New Comic Book Day. Everybody talks about Moon Knight. Everybody's going to talk about Doctor Strange. So like, how do you relay that information? Are you fun with it? Are you just like, okay, Doctor Strange is coming out. He was in the movie, so he's cool, right? Like, that's boring to me. I want somebody who like, knows his stuff and he's, talking. And one of the things like in our show is, I always tell everybody's always like nervous when they come on my show for the first time, because like the shows will start at 9:30 and I'll send the link at like 9:20 and they're like, man, wait, don't I have to get prepped? And I'm like, nah, man, this is the show title. Like, that's it. Like, just follow your heart with whatever you want to say. Right. And they're like, well, wait a minute, I gotta, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll be on at 9:20 and we could talk, right? Because like it's literally like no script. It's just us. Like, I want your natural opinion. I want you to be like, Noob, I don't really like your opinion. Like, I think you're right on this, but I think this, and I want that because it's good. It's good conversation, and then you learn, and then you go back and forth, and that's how people are, right? You can't just be a yes man or like, yeah, no, you know what? Yeah, that's right. Because on my show, that doesn't happen. Like, people are going to be like, no, I don't like that. I think it's like this. And you know, I've found that like just being yourself and having fun with it, being able to laugh at yourself, like, you know, not even just in YouTube, in life, goes a long way, man. I do it
Absolutely
too many times on my show. So
no, I think that's
yeah.
great advice. I really do. And I get that. Just sitting here talking to you on 10 questions, watching your channel, it's pretty much the same dude I watch when I watch your channel. So it's no, and that's cool. And I think that's great advice. All right. So now let's go to number 9. These last 2 questions, kind of softball questions, but I was just wondering, any other hobbies outside of comic books? Like, you know, do you collect sports cards? Do you collect antique cars? I mean, you know, do you collect, you know, Picassos? You know, like, what do you do outside of comic books?
Yeah, so I collect Ferraris. Just
nice. Me too.
I'm kidding. No, you know, I'm a big sports guy. So like I like collecting like autographed balls or jerseys. Like I'm South American, so like I have like a lot of you know, love for soccer. So I've got like, you know, a few soccer jerseys signed by like, you know, famous Uruguayan players, World Cup, things like that. You know, sports is probably like one of the biggest things in my life. Like I'm a fan of all sports. I watch sports. I talk sports. Comics and sports are probably the 2 things that if you want to sit down and waste 24 hours in a day, you're going to get me 24 hours a day. We could talk sports or comics all day, man. Like that is it. Those are 2 of my biggest loves in life. And yeah, I try to stay in comics. I also travel a lot. So like I'll collect like shot glasses from like everywhere I've been. And people like usually come like to my bar downstairs and they're like, dude, you drink a lot? And I'm like, no. Cause like a lot of people just think I drink a lot because I have all these shot glasses, but like, it's just something that I always pick up anywhere I go. It's like, it's better than a keychain. It's better than a magnet. I'm like, yeah, at least I could put this in my bar. It looks nice. And then, you know, you have a story like, oh, where'd you get that one? Well, it says Portugal. So Portugal, right? Like, you know, like
going out on a limb.
I don't know.
You know,
I don't know what else to say, right? Like, where'd you get that Miami one? Israel.
Yeah,
Israel?
in Philly,
right? So
yeah, no, like we do the magnets, right? Like my wife and I with the kids. It really started with the kids, and they wanted to get magnets. I couldn't let my 3-year-old get a shot glass, right? I mean, I could, but it might not have been good parenting. Because I like shot glasses too, and being in Kentucky, you know, bourbon country, you know, a lot of times, you know, Maker's Mark has all these collectible bottles. I like getting those too, but then I find it hard not to drink them, so I try to stay away from that as well. But no, we do the magnets like everywhere we go. You know, the girls pick out a magnet, and they've done it since they were 2 years old, 3 years old, since they knew they could do it. So that's something for them. But now I am a huge sports person too. Okay, so and this is something. This will be it'll be interesting to me. I don't. Nobody else may like this, but it'll be interesting to me. So, you know, born in Kentucky, and I tell people when you're born, you know, the first outfit that you put on will be blue, and it will say Big Blue Nation on it. You are welcome to the Big Blue Nation. So it's basketball country, right? And the Cats play tonight. We're recording this. It's a Tuesday. Noob's getting ready to do his show here in a couple hours, and I'm gonna go watch the Cats. But soccer is a game that I really don't know a whole lot about. Now, my daughter started playing soccer in high school, and it's actually a lot of fun. And it is. I know they say it's a beautiful game, you know, right? But when you watch it played and you have a good skill team, it is really pretty to watch, you know, to set up and watch how the play forms and watch how they run and how they set it up. It's a gorgeous game. Why do you think that has, like, what is it about being from in these other countries that makes soccer so huge and where it's not necessarily that way? Now in America, it's starting to get bigger, right?
Yeah,
you're starting to have some professional leagues.
Yep.
Our national teams, especially the women, have won some, you know, some of the big cups and those things. But what is it in these other countries, like where you were from South America? Like, what makes it so big in these other places?
Well, I think, like, you know, for those of you not familiar with like Uruguay, where I'm from, it's like it is a third world country. My wife will always be like, it's not. And I'm like, it is. But like a lot of these countries, especially in like South America and a lot of places in Europe, right? You know, you look at Italy and stuff like that, like there's not much money. So like, what can you make and play on the street? Well, you can get a bunch of socks and make it, or you can get, whatever and make it into a ball and do it. And that's kind of how it is. My father used to tell me a story back in the day, when he was growing up, that they used to play on a road, on a mud road with no shoes and everything. And they used to play for like 6-7 hours. And that's just what you do. So when you have a ball at your feet all the time, dribbling and things like that, it is. And then you get a national team. I mean, I'm sure there could be some hockey teams. Basketball is growing, especially like where I'm from. Like, basketball is growing, but it's nowhere close to where soccer will be. It's just, I think, like you said, right? Like, when you're born, you wear blue. I think when you're born in these parts, like, you just play soccer. Like, that's what it is. That's just kind of how it goes.
I always wondered that, because like I said, I've started to, like, I really like watching the World Cup, right? Like that high level. But I enjoy the nationality of it, right?
Yeah.
Cheering for the USA, or, cheering for Canada, or, whoever's playing. But it really is. It's an interesting game to watch if it's played well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like it when it's just, because you'll go to a lot of these high school games and we'll play teams. Like, the guy that coaches my daughter's high school team, he's they're really skilled. Mm-hmm. They dribble well, they pass well, and they shoot well. So it's really fun to watch. But sometimes you'll get against these teams and they're just kicking the ball back and forth, and that's boring as hell. But if it's played well at a high level, it's a lot of fun to watch. And it's just beautiful. Like I said, it's a beautiful game. It really is. Watching a play develop on a soccer field is as pretty as anything you'll see.
I always encourage my friends and people who don't know soccer to watch it on SAP. So put on the Latin commentary. And I always refer to them to that Simpsons clip where it's like Portugal versus Mexico or whatever. And they have like Kent Brockman being like, and the halfback goes back and he passes it, and the halfback passes back and passes it, and then you have like the Mexican guy like, lo está pasando, no, lo tiene, and it's literally like the same thing happening. And you're just like, what happened? But like, that's how like we watch soccer. Like, it's so much more entertaining, even just like them saying they're passing the ball in just Latin, because that's how we do in my house. Like, my wife is not Latin, but we watch soccer in Spanish because it's way more exciting.
No, you're right. It's fun. I mean, because really, it's when you hear it in Spanish or whatever, and it's like, goal. I don't know. Really, like, they might not be saying anything. I can't understand a word you're saying, but I mean, it sounds cool, when they do it. So no, soccer's starting to be a big thing here. Even like I said, here in rural Eastern Kentucky,
it's growing.
we used to get sticks and rocks and play baseball. I mean, because it was poor here. It was just the soccer ball was just never something we did. Yeah. Or we would go to the local school and shoot hoops. We'd play basketball. That's what we're in Kentucky. That's what you're taught to do. So no, but that's cool. Thank you for answering that. I know that's completely off topic. But
man, I like it. I
kind of wondered that. Yeah. So last question. And I know I saw a post when I was kind of going through the IG post, and I saw one of your videos where you had unboxed a Grail. And I was wondering if there were any other grails or anything. Like, do you make a list each year? Like, hey, I want to try to get this, and this. Like, kind of talk to me about some of the books you're hoping to pick up this year.
So yeah, I let the hobby pay for itself. All my grails, the hobby has paid for itself. And I say that with a big smile. Tales of Suspense 39 is the book. It is the book. I don't know what I'll do when I get the book. It's going up in price. Even like a 1.8 is just ridiculous. It turns me off in the sense that, like, I go back and forth nonstop on a daily basis with like, okay, I'm going to buy it. No, you know what? Maybe I'm just going to lose it. I'll probably just buy this, and maybe work my way up. But it keeps me motivated to hunt. It keeps me motivated to like find. And like, there's actually a lot of people like Vancouver Comic Junkie and, there's a few people who have said, they're like, I hope you don't get it. And I've always kind of like looked at them like, why wouldn't you want me to be happy? And they're like, I'm just afraid that like you'll get it and then you'll stop collecting, or like you won't have the same love. And I'm like, okay, I get that. Like, that's actually like a pretty like smart thing to say. Like, it's a possibility, right? Because when you get like what you've been going for your whole life, like you get to the top of the mountain and you're like, all right, so now I got to get down, right? And it's like, it's one of those. So like, I hope I don't feel that way, but like that is the book for me. That is the one book I strive to get. I don't necessarily like have certain books, like it changes month to month. Like I did like my 2022 like wish list, and I have like some Fantastic Four books there, and I found myself getting Tomb of Dracula 10 and Daredevil 168 recently, and it's like those weren't on my list, but like they just came to me. Like those books, you know, the price was good. Some situations and some opportunities just present themselves, you know, whether it be a good price or you meet somebody who's just like trying to offload or whatever the case may be. And they just present themselves. And I kind of just jumped at it because like life, right? You got to take some of the opportunities that are handed to you. You can't just like wait or like pass on too many, because if not, then you'll regret some of them. So that's just kind of how I do it. Cause I know like, you know, there's some guys that are like, dude, these weren't even on your like grail list. And I'm like, I know, but sometimes life isn't just point A to point B. Sometimes it's just like, you know, it does one of those till you get to the end, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. But always at the beginning of the year, I'm always like, all right, Tales of Suspense 39 and maybe Fantastic Four 5. Like those are two that I'm like, I need, but they're just getting crazy, man. Like it's a crazy hobby with like a lot of money. Right.
Well, and that's why you need to get it now. Like, I think you should get it, right? Because I'm one of those people that believe that just in talking with you, you won't stop. No. There is no top of the mountain for you. There is the top of the mountain, and then you're just going to go find a bigger mountain to climb. That's, you know, and that's how I am. You know, like, okay, I'm a goal-oriented person. Like every year I set goals for myself personally, financially, and in my business life. And I do the same thing with my comic books. And I'll set some pretty high, you know, way up on the mountain type books. Yeah. But once I get there, then I'm just going to go find the next mountain, you know, and I think you're probably like that too. So I hope you do get the book, and I think you ought to get after it. Absolutely. So, man, look, that's 10 questions. Okay. And I've had an absolute blast. That was a whole lot of fun. And I'll link all Newbie stuff down in the description below. So that you know how to go find him. I imagine if you've seen my channel, you're probably watching his. But if you're not, go check him out. He has some great content. And we kind of walk through some of the segments tonight that he does on his channel, and to kind of give you a little taste of what he does. Now go over there and get the real thing for sure. So I always end the show, Newbie, by saying, thank you for joining me. This has been 10 Questions. But I want you, in your best soccer, you know, foreign language, however you want to do it, whatever language you want to do it, this has been 10 Questions. Take us out.
Hey, this has been 10 questions, eh? That's 10 questions. No, that's the Canadian way. Hey,
that's right.
Thank you, Jimmy. I want to thank you so much for having me on 10 Questions. This has been a blast. I appreciate it. 10 Questions out.
See you guys next week.